To piggyback what David said about the black community being about anything that relates to homosexuality, I don't feel like it's a big deal anymore because you have like a lot of these hip hop artists like Young Thug. There's been I'm serious. There's been a lot of talk about him possibly being gay. I mean, by the way that he dresses, and he's calling his other like friends bae and baby or whatever term of endearment. And then you have Lil Wayne, there's a picture going around with him kissing Birdman. Like on the, like they're in like embracing and the lips are like close together, like they're about to kiss. And then you have Frank Ocean, who's like extremely popular with R&B, who came out. So I feel like it's not a huge deal anymore. I feel like people are becoming more accepting, or I don't know, maybe it's because these people are already established in their careers, so they're like, oh, well, whatever.
That's why I find it crazy that you'd be willing, well, like, if this is what you're saying, that you'd be willing to almost not do that huge role for you because of you're worried about what the black community would say. Like that's really interesting.
Because the rumors will always follow you. Like people will always say Trey Songz is gay, Trey Songz is gay, but they'll still listen to his music. They'll still go to his concerts, still buy his CDs, his music and everything.
Just growing up in this country and thinking about the history of this country and slavery and civil rights and all these things, to me it's shocking that any African American or black person in this country would say there's something wrong with homosexuality and feel like, even if they feel it, like the idea of suppressing some sort of rights or anything of that nature, because it's like we had this struggle, we still have this struggle. Why are we gonna be perpetuating this? If anything, we should be this community's greatest advocates, because in turn we are advocating ourselves. We are advocating an ideal of equality and freedom and not judging people based on superficial stuff. So I mean, that was just the connection that I felt with both the Wayne and Andre character as I wrote them.
And so thinking about that along with this topic of, how people perceive things, even though Flavors was presented in a comedic vein, there's a lot of, kind of hardcore jokes thrown in there. Did any of you feel concerned or nervous about that?
Actually, after just watching it, because I completely forgot certain dialogue, like a lot of John Paul stuff, I was just like, ooh, it kind of hurt, but it was funny because it hurt because it still goes on. Like I still experience it, and I know friends who have experienced like certain things like that are the jokes that John Paul was saying. So it's so weird that I can watch it and I still feel like, ugh.
So
well, that's the magic of editing and writing, that he was able to make it so good. Otherwise, he could have easily made a different episode out of that. I mean, that's the miracle of the editing room.
And so what was really interesting, and let's talk about the character Brett that John Paul plays. What's really interesting about him is that he says some of the most hardcore stuff that is, comes out in a joke, but he's also framed up as kind of a lovable, innocent jock character. So when you hear that stuff, even though you kind of get that he's the guy who doesn't get it, he doesn't know, does it change the way it feels, or do you know people like that?
Well, watching it, when Brett says the jokes that he says, it doesn't come off as malicious.
Right.
But it still hurts. But I think it's a lot of people who are like Brett who really don't know. Like they are ignorant to certain cultures, and they honestly think this way about a certain type of race or African Americans.
Even in this day and age, where you would think we're so progressive and there's so many media outlets to learn and grow and consume culture, that we're still finding people that may not know. And truly, when we look at Brett's character, he was kind of looking almost in awe of Wayne, that he's got kind of the blessing of a naturally fit physique, and doesn't think that talking about, because of all the slavery is a problem. you know? So it's like, you know, what about those people when you come across them? Do you kind of give them a pass? Does it irritate you? Does that happen still?
I guess I don't really experience it that much because of where we live here in LA. I mean, everyone lives here and we're all happy and, well, we're all happy, whatever. But everyone's here, so you better deal with accepting it, you know. But I still see pockets, like I'm from Pennsylvania, and years ago, I was at my golf course that I grew up golfing on, and I grew up in, you know, 99.9% white everybody. We were all just the same, horse country, and right outside of Philly, 28 miles outside of Philly. And I remember I was in the clubhouse one time, and this is 5-6 years ago, and the television was on, and these two older white guys were just sitting there smoking their cigarettes, drinking their beers, and they looked up at the television, and I don't know what I was doing, but I was buying something, and I hear the one guy look up and he goes, "Yeah, I think he is. He's gay. That guy's gay. He's a..." And then he said the F word in reference to it, and they were shocked that they were, and I went, "What the hell year is it? What?" Like, they were like, "You look at that guy up there doing that," and I was like, "Jesus, we're not even that far. We're only Philly's 20 miles that way." And I was in Philly 10 years ago with my grandmother, and we were walking down the street, and we walked past a black guy, and I noticed my grandmother clenched her purse just a little harder, and she's 80 years old. Yeah. It was just her natural, and I was like, wow, people still have their pocket. There's still these pockets of mentality, and they don't mean any harm. It's just, that's what I know, and that's what I know, and that's what I know, because...
I think absolutely that happens. I think we do live in a world where we're just, as human beings, it's just human nature to judge. And I think that, you know, there's so much talk about so many issues in the world today, especially when we think about what's happening with police and African Americans and all these kinds of things. And the reality is just this deeper human thing to where we do these snap judgments. And so I think that, you know, what I like about Flavors and just doing this project is just this opportunity to talk about the way that we think. And even if we're not consciously aware of it, I think by beginning to talk about stuff and being super honest is how we then become aware, like, you know, I do that. And being able to have the self-awareness to watch ourselves, because I think that on a certain level, it might not look like a big deal, but then ultimately that's how a black kid gets killed, you know, because he's walking down the street with a hoodie. You know what I'm saying? So I think that, you know, yeah, that's why I love art, and we can have these conversations and bring these things up. The second thing is, you know, everything that comes out of Brett's mouth is based on my life experience. Like this whole entire thing, of course. So when I wrote this, it was kind of a catharsis. Like I was just getting some shit off my chest, you know what I'm saying? Like just frustrations and all kinds of things, and really from not only from the white community when it deals with racism, but even the black community, you know, as far as racism. Because growing up, I was the only black guy in my neighborhood, and then having to have the experience of, you know, growing up around whites and speaking like the way they spoke, and then getting that, and then making friends when I was older, and then going to their neighborhoods and my black friends' neighborhoods, and it was completely different. And like, wow, like the reaction from the black folks, they were like, "Where are you from?" Like, and that happened enough times where I felt the pressure, like, I gotta black it up. Like, I gotta figure this out. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I tried and failed miserably over and over again, but I just had to in that situation. Like, the human thing is to want acceptance. And if I wasn't being accepted the way that I was, I tried to be a little different. And nobody was buying it, but I tried for a long time until I got over it and felt like I was accepting myself just for who I am.
Real quick, when I was in first grade, I had one of my friends in the neighborhood who I went to school with, of course, we rode the same bus and stuff. He, around first grade, we started to notice tendencies, my brother and I, we all hung out together, that he was probably gay. And he started to get a lot of enemies at school, in the playground. Boys wouldn't pick him for kickball and stuff like that. I'll never forget this. And my parents sat me down one time. I don't know how old I was, 7 or 8. And they said, here's the deal. there's a really good chance that, I'm not going to say names, but there's a really good chance that so-and-so is not like you and your brother. You don't have to be, you can stop being his friend, but you can't be his enemy. There's no reason to be this kid's enemy. You don't have to like who he is, you know, everything like that, but you're his friend right now. And I know that things are going on with lots of kids at school, and like people are talking about this kid, yada, yada, yada. You don't have to be his friend anymore, but there's no reason to be his enemy. Just leave him alone. Don't go against him. I remember that. Yeah.
That's cool. That's kind of and that's a great way for her to kind of help you process and kind of think through your own choices.
Yeah.
And not to go with the crowd.
Because I was so young, I was like, I was seeing all these other kids make fun of him, and I could just see him just sort of getting beat down. And I'm 7. I don't know who I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I just want to fit in. I just want to fit in and be liked by everybody. So I was like, well, should I make fun of him too? Yeah. Like I remember going like, right. I think I'm supposed to make fun of him too. But that doesn't feel right.
I wonder if our kids' generation, if we're not even going to be, like, if this is a totally different topic. Because obviously I think, or if we're going to be talking about it differently, you know, because I think that, like, I don't know, do you guys feel that the people who are ignorant are the same generation or they're older?
Well, I think we have a different type of ignorance. I think with older generations, it's just racism of different sorts, whether they're aware of it or not. But in this generation, what's happening is a friend of mine's a school teacher, and they're actually doing these anti-bullying campaigns where a lot of money is going in for like third parties to come in and then teach these kids not to bully, and especially cyberbullying. And I mean, kids are being made fun of for everything. And so essentially, anytime someone is making fun or bullying, there's a judgment there. There's like something is wrong with you, and then obviously this person's willingness to express that something is wrong with you, and then kids ganging up on that. And it's terrible because, I mean, you know, from everything from, you know, kids suicide, the suicide level it's in some places, and then also just the reality of like kids dropping out of school just because they don't feel like they fit in.
So you're saying that, to Abby's point, it's just evolved.
Yeah, it's a different type.
Stuff,
the core's the same. The core's the same. I have a judgment about you as a person. I believe it's right, or I feel pressure because my other friends are making fun of this person, you know, and I'm gonna jump in so that I fit in, and then, you know, it just all gets crazy. Like, it doesn't help our society, you know, because at the end of the day, everyone just wants to be happy